In real estate right now, there's a lot of people it's sexy to have Airbnbs, and people are making full-blown portfolios. Go ask all those same people how well they felt about Airbnbs in April of 2020.
Right.
When travel stopped, airlines stopped, those people were losing their minds because they were worried. Why? Because they have really nice, sexy houses. So here's the funny thing. I tell people this. If you have 2 rentals, nobody thinks it's sexy. If you have 22 doors, people start thinking it's sexy again. If you've got 62 doors, people are like, dude, what the heck are you doing, man? Teach me. All of my rentals save my home that I live in. None of them have more than 3 bedrooms. None of them. Why? Because I want to be the Budlight of real estate. I want to be the thing that everybody can afford. Good economies, bad economies. I want to be generally flat. It's what I have dubbed. It's my liquor store days, right? It's the Budlight of real estate.
Mike Hills, welcome to the BetterWealth podcast, my friend.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate being here.
You know, I'm really looking forward to our conversation because you are a spitfire. You're going to teach us how to build wealth using real estate. We know the typical way is not the right way. And also what's fascinating, and I want you to share a little bit about your story, but you have a very unique relationship with Zillow. I know you got to be careful with that, but I'm still going to drill you on some of the things that I'm fascinated by just with that business model. So overall, who are you? Why are you on the podcast? Why should someone invest the next couple minutes listening to this epic interview that I'm sure it's going to be?
Absolutely. So here's what we tell people. Right now, we are all facing a dilemma, and that dilemma is how to retire. The traditional ways of making money, there's just better ways to do it out there. You know, I think I'm up to 10, maybe 12 different financial planners owe me lunch or dinner, and they won't call me back anymore because my way is better than theirs. Little history of me. My father was a financial planner, and I finally beat him into submission using math and why real estate is better than the traditional way. But here's what we do. We lead by example. So I run the brokerage for Atlas Real Estate. We buy real estate, own real estate, manage real estate, and we're up to 7 states right now, mostly in the western part of the United States. We have a unique perspective on all things real estate. Mom and pop investors, big corporate investors, large institutional investors like Zillow. I've been personally investing for 20 years. Actually, I sold my very first piece of real estate 7 weeks ago that I ever purchased, September 1st, 2001. 1031 exchanged the money and closed on a 6-unit apartment in Littleton, Colorado, literally this morning, and then flew to Phoenix, Arizona, where I happen to be right now doing this interview. So I bought a 6-unit apartment for $1.2 million today. And that started with an investment of $6,800 on a gift letter from my mom doing what's now called house hacking. Back when I did it, it was called, "You're just crazy. What are you doing? You're 22. We lead by example. I wouldn't tell anybody to do with their money what I haven't done with my own money first. And I think that's why people listen to us, because this isn't rocket science. I'm not going to invent the next widget. Most of us aren't. So how do we make the best financial decisions for us today to still get us into the tomorrow that we want to create for ourselves?
I love it, man. And I'm obsessed with frameworks. I love frameworks, and I love asking successful people that I would be willing to trade places with, how do you think about money? Because we can hear different deals, and I love that. It's great examples. But what I find is majority of wealth is not created on accident. It's created by a process of how we think. What is your framework on how to get wealthy? You say that 12 financial planners own you lunch. I'm not one of them, by the way. But
no, you're not.
Anyways, I'm just curious, this is fascinating to me because you are a walking example of someone that gets it. And I like what you said. It's not some magical widget. A lot of times success is not this fun, exciting thing that's shining. It's usually it's principle. So yeah, talk about that framework.
Here's what I would say. Most people think that what we're trying to do is create money, and they think about that as building wealth or building dollars, or like trying to hit a target in their bank account or their target on a balance sheet. When I say it's really about creating options, because when you're 65, what you're after is different than when you're 40 or than when you're 25. When I was 25, my goal was to have a net worth of $1 million by the time I was 30. And the funny thing is I hit that mark. By the time I was 33, I had lost it all. So I have a unique perspective. And to give anybody a frame of reference time-wise, I turned 30 in 2008. So to say that I hit it by the beginning of, my birthday's in July. So turned 30, July 2008, I was like, I'm worth $1 million. This is legit. By 2010, I had lost it all, which is a different story in and of itself. But for me, creating wealth is really not about wealth as it is about options. And I'll give you an example. One of the things that I coach and teach on is I have 4 small children. My oldest is 10. My youngest is 3. And the example that I give people, and it doesn't need to be my why, but part of my why is, how do I send my kids to college? I went to the University of Denver. When I went to DU school, it cost about $20,000 a year, roughly, with room and board. It raised over 4 years. My total tuition bill was about $90,000 for 4 years of college. My parents helped. I had 1 year today, right? But I had academic scholarship. My parents helped, and I had a full-time job. And when I got out of school, I still had student loans of about $25,000. So when my wife and I started having kids, I was like, man, how do I send my kids to college without the burden of a 5 or 6 figure debt on their lives when they get out of school at 22 years old, which I'm sure a bunch of your listeners are looking at that either for themselves or their kids. So what I've done is I said, okay, I went and researched this, and financial planners will tell you that what you do is you invest in a 529 plan, which is a government-sponsored college savings plan. Everybody knows what a 529 plan. Well, I took that way of thinking and I was like, man, you can shove it, because I think that's a terrible way of thinking. So here's what I did for each one of my children. Before they turned 3 years old, I bought them a house. The first 2, my 2 oldest, my 10-year-old and my 9-year-old, were houses that I actually house hacked in the mid 2000s. The last 2 kids, I frankly had more money when they were born, so I could just put a down payment and buy an investment property. But what I did was I bought a house for each kid before they turned 3 years old, put it on a 15-year, fully amortized fixed rate note. Because do the math, 3 years old plus 15 years, the kid's 18 years old, college is paid for. That becomes their college fund. I never have to think about it again. I never have to save my own money. And here's what I've done. Have I created wealth? Sure. But what I've actually done is create options. Now there's 3 options in that scenario. Option number 1, when my kid hits 18, I could just sell the house. That's a taxable event, but I could just sell the house, pay the taxes, take the proceeds, send them to school. Or maybe my kid goes to a junior college or is a good athlete and has a scholarship, or is smart and has an academic scholarship. Well, now I don't owe the bank anymore. So I can take that rent, because I don't have to pay the bank anymore, and I could pay their college tuition. Right. Or I could do a cash out refinance, and I could pull my own money against myself, which is not taxable, have the same tenants pay off the new loan, and I could send them to college. So what I've actually done, while it is creating wealth, what I've done is played chess. I'm not playing checkers. I'm trying to solve a goal 15 years in the future, when most Americans think of the future as, 6 months from now or 2 years from now. It's like, no, man, my youngest son, Zeke, my wife and I bought him his college house when he was 4 months from being born. He wasn't even born yet. So when he's 14 and a half years old, his house is paid off.
So I'm just curious, what were the prices of the houses? And I'm sure you bought them in your name, right? You could buy them in your kid's name. So is it just a technicality? Are you just going to sign it over to them? How much? Because I'm sure your firstborn, did you put the same type of down payments down on each house, or what? How did you create a fair play with inflation and with the crazy times we live in?
So the thought is, I'm probably not going to give them the houses. I just will agree to pay for their college tuition.
Yep.
However I want to. Now, here's the interesting thing. And for those parents that are listening, I probably won't actually tell them that I'm going to pay their college tuition.
Yeah.
You better get good grades, brother. Daddy ain't paying for it just so you can go party your face off at Arizona State. No.
Yeah.
I'm doing this because you earn it, because I want to, but I'm not obligated to. There's a huge, huge, huge difference. And frankly, for me, one of the things now is I look at my kids and I go, how do I raise good humans, not just spoiled rich jerks? Because that is not what I want to raise. I want the option to pay for it, but I don't feel compelled. If my kid, wants to go to San Diego State and party his face off, fine, you can do that on your dime. You want to go to Harvard and get a good education, I'm happy to pay for that too. Political affiliation aside. But that's what keeps me up at night now is just raising good humans. not people that are spoiled rich jerks.
Right.
But I'm not gonna, my commitment is I'll pay for their college. Like in the end, fair is a relative thing. Like one of the kids, like, I have 2 daughters. By definition, I'm gonna have to pay for 2 weddings, which means I'm gonna have to, spend more on them than I do on the boys.
Right. There's so many directions that I could go. I think one thing I'll just highlight is when we talk about options, I 100% agree. And it's interesting to me because I look at the future and I ask the question, will college be relevant in 20 years? I don't know. It's very interesting. I think on one hand, it's become the new high school degree. And on the other hand, I think some people are realizing it's like, what value am I actually getting? Because if you want the experience, there's cheaper experiences out there that can give you all the friends you need for a fraction of the price. So it's just very interesting. And as a business owner, let's talk about how you raise your kids, because you talk about multiple times you want to raise them as kind human beings. What are some of your values? How do you teach your kids on how to understand money? Because I'm fascinated by this, because there usually is a trend where you have wealthy parents, their kids don't grow up very ambitious, but sometimes that's not the case. And so it's not like a black and white, but how are you raising your kids to be intentional? And if I remember correctly, your oldest is 10 years old. So they're still on the young side, but where's your mindset as it relates to raising kids?
So a couple of funny things. A funny story comes to mind. I have a client who's a very wealthy man. And once his kids got into like high school and started understanding money, he would say these words to them. He'd look at his kids and say, "Hey, you're not rich. I am. This is mine. And if I want to give it all away, I will. Like, I don't owe you this money. I will give you an easier path than I had." And that's kind of for me. I want to give my kids an easier path than I had, but I still want you to go out and work, and I want you to go out and earn it. And if you want to come to work for me someday, great. But you know what I want? I want you to go get your teeth kicked in the real world for 6 or 8 or 10 years. And then you can come to work for me. And I'm totally okay with that. Specifically about money, one of the things that I did actually last year, right before COVID hit, March of 2020, I took my daughter, who is now 10, she was 9 at the time. She and I went and spent a week in Lima, Peru, outside of in the slums, and worked in an orphanage and a community center, just serving the very, very, very poor kids. And my daughter speaks Spanish. So, she's a white girl with blonde hair and she's fluent in Spanish. So it was awesome to see her relating and realize that America's poor. Now, I don't want to piss anybody off, but America's poor are not the world's poor. It is a different class of poor in our society. And, I struggle when politicians talk about that. And it's like, go visit the slums of some of these big South American countries, or even in Mexico. I have never visited those places in Mexico, but I know they exist. And then come and talk to me about what poverty really is. And that's one of the ways that I work with my kids on understanding what the world really is outside of, the nice cars and the private schools. And, heck, my kids this year, we went to freaking Atlantis, in the Bahamas for spring break. Like, that's not real life. That's not how I grew up. It's how my kids are growing up, because I want to do that stuff. The world doesn't owe you anything.
Right.
And that is important to me.
I think perspective is a huge part of wealth, and my life has been changed probably the most ever, like going on missions trips. And you go and you think like you go to these other countries and you're like, oh, I'm the gift to them. And you leave and you realize, wow, they were the gift to me. I remember being in Guatemala, and literally like I went to villages and people lived in huts, mud huts, and they were going blind because of smoke and all these things. And it's just perspective. It's like I got on an airplane to fly back to the States, and I had better food in the air than these people had. It's just crazy to me, but it gives you ultimate perspective, because at the end of the day, I mean, we could get really religious, we could get really philosophical here, but like our life, the fact that we're born in the United States, the fact that if you're listening to this right now or watching this right now, you're in the 1% to 2% of the world. And
history, not just
history.
The world.
Like, by the way,
history.
200 years ago, are you wanting to trade places with the richest person on earth? No, thank you. I wouldn't trade places 200 years ago for the richest man on earth, and that's what tells you how rich we are as a country.
Right. Oh, and it's just perspective, and it's, so some of the values, core values, just kindness, compassion, trying to have empathy, trying to lead by example, and trying to, there's so many, especially real estate investors, that, man, they will run over you to make $10. And it's like, build for the long term.
Right.
This is not a get rich quick thing. There's a lot of flippers. I'm sure there's a lot of flippers listening right now. And I flip houses every now and then, probably do 2 deals a year, but I'm much more interested in long-term wealth creation than just flipping a house and making a paycheck. Yep. And that's really what we coach and teach on, is that this is about wealth, not just, sweet, you made 50 grand on a deal, but you're going to give Uncle Sam, 20 or 25% of that, and the risk that you had to take versus just buying and letting real estate do its thing.
So is it fair to say what you guys teach and what you live out is buying real estate assets, holding them, having them obviously appreciate, but getting cash flow? Is that mm-hmm. And I don't want to simplify your message, but is that essentially what you teach?
So we have the four what we would call our investment thesis is, number one is buy for the 20-year picture. Okay. Can I reasonably bet that the asset that I'm purchasing is going to be worth more in 20 years than it is today? And most people would say, well, that's really easy. And it's actually not, because you have to buy in good markets. And we define good markets in a variety of ways. One thing that I tell investors to look for is population growth. If the population's not growing, then you're going to have a hard argument thinking that your asset's going to get too much better in value. I mean, look at the places that the real estate market's gone crazy. It almost always, always is and never are bad words to use, but it's simple supply and demand economics. So first one I would say is 20-year picture. Do you believe in the 20-year picture? Number two, is there a story, or what I would refer to as path of development? There's a place in Denver, Colorado, where I live. There's a big street called Colfax. And if you say Colfax to most people that are Denverites that have been around for a long time, to be very blunt, they'll think of prostitution and drugs, because that's what Colfax is known for. But if you look at, there's an intersection of I-225 or Highway 225 and Colfax, and over the past maybe 7 years, they, being the government, has spent $4 billion with a B building massive hospitals, 2 VA wings, Children's Hospital and University of Colorado Children's Hospital, right, Anschutz Medical Center. And you know what's happened to the real estate that's in concentric circles around there? It's gone crazy. Well, you know what? We started buying in that area what's called Aurora North, which is frankly a rougher part of Aurora, Denver, Colorado, which Aurora is just a suburb. We started buying there probably 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And any of myself and our clients that have bought there, we have made an absolute killing on the real estate. Why? Because of that path of development. The third thing that we want when we buy is we buy things that have positive cash flow. There's a lot of places in the country where you can buy and you get really good cash flow, but you get no appreciation. There's other places where you get really good appreciation, but no cash flow. If you're buying for really good appreciation, but you get no cash flow, then you're just speculating. You're just gambling. Let's go to Vegas, because that's all that is. But I want both. I want appreciation and I want cash flow. Why? Because the economy right now, anybody that comes to you and is like, I'm a great investor. I always ask, great, when did you start investing? Like 2016. Yeah. Anybody's made money. If you bought anything in the
so
United
am
States,
I. I'm a great investor too. Yeah.
Yeah, like everybody is. And I'm not knocking anybody, but it's here's the deal. The market's going to go down. Who knows when, but it will go down. So that's why you want the good assets, the 20-year holds with cash flow, so that you can withstand the downtimes. And then the fourth one is we manage roughly 6,000 doors of property management. The goal is to grow that to 15,000 over the next 3 years, because we built our PM company, our property management company, who is just another division of Atlas, as owners helping owners. I don't trust most property management companies. I don't think most of them do a good job, because they're sneaky with their fees, and we're very, very upfront about it. So I would say from a 30,000 foot view, those are our 4 pillars: 20-year picture, path of development, positive cash flow, and then we have to do the property management. I mean, we don't have to. I have plenty of clients that buy and want to do it themselves. And usually what happens for your listeners, that when you have 2 doors, you want to do it yourself. When you have 6 doors, you want to do PM yourself. When you have 16 doors, you're like, whoa, I've got a day job, brother. I don't want to, and that's what happened to me personally is, when I had 10 and 20 doors, fine. When I got up to 50, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm too busy doing other stuff. And then what happens, frankly, and everybody that owns properties knows this, you get too close with your tenants and then you don't treat it like a business anymore. Yeah. You don't raise rents when you should. You don't, post 3-day notices or now 10-day notices when you should. Like, you're just nicer because that's what's easy. And we find that people that own real estate, when they hand it over to us, their portfolio typically performs better because somebody actually is taking a much more active role in it.
Let's talk about the businesses that you own, because you've mentioned a couple of things like property management. You're a real estate investor. You guys also buy and sell houses, I believe, for people. So I want to get a picture of your businesses and some of the learning successes and failures that you've experienced through business.
Sure.
So
I have a unique story in that I still think, we all go talk to our high school counselor, and our high school counselor comes to us as high school students and says, find out what you really love, what's your passion, and do that. Well, I really like to drink and gamble. So I owned 2 liquor stores and was building a casino in Black Hawk, Colorado. And that all went very, very poorly. And the crash in 2008, 2009 cost me my casino because it wasn't open yet. And that cost me my liquor stores. What's sadder is it cost me my best friend, which sucks. I mean, we can still talk today, but there was a lot of years we were really mad at each other because of the crash in 2008, 2009, which I know a lot of people, we were business partners and lost that. And what happened while I was doing that, I was actually house hacking. Again, millennials dubbed it house hacking. People just called me crazy through the 2000s while the liquor stores and casinos were going on. And 2012, the liquor stores, casino, my life there I needed something to do. I owned 5 houses and the real estate was going surprisingly well, albeit very quietly, because I wasn't giving any effort to it. What I was doing was house hacking. I was buying a house, living there. A little bit later, I would move and turn that into a rental. And my wife and I at the time, we had 5 houses, and a college buddy of mine who founded Atlas, because I'm not the founder of Atlas, was like, hey man, why don't you join me? And I joined Atlas as there was 2 founders, our controller and me. I was the fourth one to join the Atlas team. And today we're roughly 150 employees. And we have very distinct business lines. So brokerage is the one that I run. So I run the brokerage, report directly to our CEO. We've got a property management division that has 6,000 doors. We have an institutional investment arm, which, if you read the Wall Street Journal, every 3 weeks, there's another article that says, if you sell your house today, there's a 30% chance you're selling to a hedge fund. And it's true. So I have a unique perspective into that. And then, as you mentioned earlier, we have Zillow as a client as well on that, the big corporate real estate side. So those are our business lines, all under the banner of the Atlas Real Estate.
So Zillow, they work with you to invest in real estate. Is that a correct statement?
So no, what Zillow is doing is, first of all, let me say this for everybody that's mad at Zillow. I freaking love Zillow. I mean, there are agents, there are real estate professionals out there that are mad at who Zillow is and what Zillow is doing. I think what Zillow is doing is fantastic. And really what they're at the core of what they're doing is they're trying to make the consumer experience easier and better. And frankly, the buying a house is a pain in the neck. And what Zillow has done is come in and said, hey, let's make this easier. So what they're doing in markets, I forget the exact number, but Denver being one of them, Denver, Colorado Springs, and Fort Collins, which is our relationship with Zillow, they are buying single family homes, but they're not buying them to make a ton of money on them. What they're doing is they're buying to own them for a few months and then turn around and sell them, all the time making the consumer experience just a little bit better. So that's what Zillow's doing. We happen to be, we've helped them we've had a relationship with Zillow now for going on 3 years. And there's some lead things that we do with them on the residential real estate side. There's some help with analyzing their properties but Zillow is buying real estate, but they're not buying to hold. They're not taking this out of the hands of the American consumer, like a lot of like some of the joint venture people, some of those articles that you see. Some of them are, and That is legitimate.
And again, one of the things that I'm not super familiar with the model, but they obviously know a ton of data. They have a ton of data about what's going on. And so what they will do is they'll buy a house and they probably will get a good price on that, and then hold it for a couple months and resell it. And then if they resold it, would they use a realtor, or would they just sell it with someone like and use an employee in Zillow? Is that how they're doing that? Do they like offer homes, or do they just, when people list their house, will they just buy it? Like, how do they work as it relates to that?
So they are using realtors when they go
Okay.
to sell their house, which is one of the reasons I love them, because my company is the realtors that they use.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
let's be honest. I mean, so we have a very tight relationship with Zillow in that regard. In some instances, they use realtors. So, the rumor is everybody thinks that Zillow is trying to put people realtors out of business, and they're not. Now, will that change in the future? I have no idea. But today, I can tell you that they're not. They've been very good to realtors, but they're the 8,000-pound gorilla, so people get mad at them, which is fine. But I just love what they're doing, because they make it easier. I mean, all of us, what do we do when I wonder what my house is worth? What do we do? We go on Zillow and get his estimate. That's what we all do. I mean, that's because it's the quickest, fastest, easiest way. And I think it's legit. So I love it when people talk trash and then go on and I'm like, you're on Zillow. I bet it's in your freaking search history on your computer. And yet you're going to bash. I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
So does that answer your question?
Yeah. There's a couple realtors that listen to this podcast. What would your message be to double down and how to make that successful? Like, do you have any billboard advice?
I would say that get on the bus, because if you think that real estate's going to go back to the way it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you're crazy. Yep. So innovate or go hungry. I mean, that's honestly, whether that's Zillow, that's not in relation to Zillow or not Zillow. That's just real estate is changing, has changed, will continue to change. The days of, you and I don't remember this because we're too young, but some of your listeners probably do. When you get in your realtor's car and your realtor has that like flip book, with a 3-page binder and you have to turn the pages to see the listings that they have. Like I've heard, the old people tell me stories of that. I'm like, that sounds awful. Like I've been doing this a long time, and I think I can count on one hand how many of my clients I've actually put in my car and physically drove them around. Like that is not the way things happen. Now, will they go back to that? Yeah. I guess they could. And that's sort of my point. Like change, be different, innovate, or find yourself hungry in a few years.
4.5 years ago, when I told people we're going to do this thing online and not meet with people in person, they were even like, oh, that's not how financial advising is done. Like you have to meet in person across the table. And it's just fascinating to me. It's like sometimes how slow we are as a society to innovate, but then sometimes how quick. And I think the pandemic definitely, if there's one thing that is a positive, it's like people realize that you could literally work from anywhere, and technology could be a horrible thing, but in some cases could be an amazing thing and help you with efficiency. I want to dive into real estate and what's the difference between real estate, the market, gold, Bitcoin, all the other opportunities out there. I'm a fan of buying and selling businesses and really understanding that, but I understand that takes a special type of mindset. So why real estate? And why is it the best asset class versus all the other asset classes out there that we can be investing in?
So for me, I think it comes down to access, intelligence, and capital. In order to buy gold or cryptocurrencies, you need a bunch of capital, and you need it to go really well so that your capital increases. Real estate is one of those things. So when I own real estate, I get paid 5 ways. 5 ways. I get positive cash flow, I get appreciation, I get debt reduction, I get, and then the last 2 are taxes, but we won't get into that. But then I get the tax benefit of the other 2. Well, show me another asset where you can get all of those things. And the best part is because of the use of leverage. The proper use of leverage. Where people get themselves really pinched is when they improperly use leverage, whether you're talking, stock market buying on margin or, you get it. But you properly use leverage, real estate will make you freaking rich on somebody else's money, especially when your tenants are the ones paying it down. I mean, it's silly how well we can do. I mean, I'll give you an example. The first two places I ever bought, I bought in 2001, September 1st, 2001, and then September 4th. The first house, I put $6,800 down of my mom's money because I didn't have any money. There's three things you need to buy a house. You need income, you need credit, and you need a down payment. Well, I had my first big boy job. I had gotten literally 3 paychecks. Yep. I had good credit, and I didn't have a down payment. So I borrowed it from my mom in what's called a gift letter, which means she gave it to me. I still paid her back, but let's pretend, so I borrowed the money from her, bought it September 1st, 2001. Market crashes right after September 11th, which was 10 days later. But I just turned 23. I was too stupid to know the difference. So I just owned the house. Moved 2004, bought another house. My same 2 roommates from my first house moved in with me. I rented the first little townhouse that I bought. And those 2 assets I owned all the way until 2021. One of them I refinanced a year ago, pulled out $400,000 and bought 2 fourplexes in Phoenix. And then I sold both of those and did what's called a 1031 exchange tax deferral program and bought apartments. So if I'm being very honest, I think the first house, call it $7,000 for my mom. Second house cost me $13,000. So it's a total of $20,000. Today, I think that $20,000 has grown into 1.1 million, maybe, give or take, on a $20,000 investment. Now, it's taken 20 years to get there. It's taken forever. But okay, I'll take that time to make that kind of money. That's the power of real estate because of the proper use of leverage. And I would say that it's safe. For me, I don't invest in crypto, not because I don't like it, just because I don't really trust it. And frankly, man, I know what I make on my money in real estate. I just don't need to be risky.
Right. Because I'm a nerd, we're gonna do this math. So you say approximately $21,000 you invested over 21 years, and you would say the future value is
call it $1 million.
Okay,
Could call it $1 million for easy math.
Okay, so that's a 20%, over 20%.
Yeah, it's about
every year, which is unreal if you think about it. Over 21 years at 20% growth.
And here's the best part. That doesn't include the tax write-offs or the positive cash flow. That's just the value versus the value today. Now if I had to sell, I'd have to pay some taxes, and that is true. But on my balance sheet right now, it looks great.
Yeah. And this is what I would say is, let's talk about leverage for a second, because if you look at anything, I mean, we talked about our mutual friend, Pete, who helps people with stages. That's a form of leverage. Technology, form of leverage. We're having a conversation that thousands of people are going to listen to. Leverage. The reason why real estate, this is how I articulate real estate, and I'm not a guru like you as it relates to this class, but real estate's amazing because it appreciates, and a lot of assets do. It can create cash flow, and it's probably one of the better assets that can create cash flow. You get depreciation, which is an amazing tax benefit. But then when you can use other people's money, and you can do that in other things like business, but it's really hard. Like getting a business loan versus getting a real estate loan is incredibly difficult. And so that for me is like, when I think of real estate, especially the single family houses, talk about the easiest way to get hundreds of thousands of dollars for an asset that, especially if you buy it right, there's very little to no downside because it's a hard asset. It's not like it's not like these things it's not like the US dollar that we could just keep printing. It's like it's a hard asset. And the other thing is, I had Jason Hartman on the podcast recently, and we were talking about mortgages and how it's essentially a short on the American dollar. And like, this is a thought experiment. If I could get a mortgage and that wasn't backed by anything, I would do it, because I have confidence over the next 30 years that I can take money and earn a greater rate of return, especially when our dollars every year are getting less and less valuable. And so not
Yes.
only are we shorting the American dollar, but we're buying an asset that's going to hopefully grow in value the more valuable we can create. So I'm getting passionate about this too, but it's really understanding how to use leverage, and real estate is the number one asset class as it relates to leveraging leverage.
Because here's the deal. It's a federal law. There's no discrimination. It doesn't matter if they like you. If you check the boxes, the bank has to give you a loan. It's amazing. Now, story time for you. Check this out. True story. So the first place I ever bought, I made mention to it a couple times. I had just turned 23, and I'm sitting at the closing table with my lender. I don't remember who it is. He could be sitting next to me and I would not recognize. I don't remember his name. I know it was a guy. That's all I remember. And I'm sitting at the title company, and there's a bajillion documents to sign, and one of them says verify here, sign here that you make $89,000 a year. And I was like, what? I don't make $89,000 a year. I make $30,000 a year. I'm literally right out of college. Like I said, I just turned 23. My first big boy job. And he's like, well, yeah, but this is called a stated income loan. I was like, what the heck does that mean? It means you tell us how much that you make, you sign this dotted line, and we give you the loan. And I was like, bro, that's lying. And he's like, yeah, but everybody's doing it. And do you want the loan or not? Because if you don't do this, we don't give you the loan. And I was like, well, that's stupid. So you're telling me that I signed this document, you're going to give me a $139,000 loan for this little house, and my two buddies are going to come rent from me, and my personal obligation would be no different, the exact same amount of money, if the three of us went and rented another house. And he's like, yeah. I was like, cool, where do I sign? The mistake that I made is I didn't do that every year. I should have freaking done that every year, but instead I waited every couple of years. And frankly, that's how the American economy, the American people, the lenders, Wall Street, I believe everybody's guilty for the crash in 2008, 2009. For me, I was like you said earlier, I was just betting on myself. I looked at this and said, this is fantastic. So you're going to give me a loan. All I got to do is make sure I make the payments forever and you stay happy. Yep. And they're like, yeah. I was like, okay, well, I've never welched on a debt in my life, and I don't plan on starting now. So, all right, cool. I make $89,000 a year. That's stupid, but okay.
Let's talk about prediction time. I know people have been predicting all kinds of things that don't turn out. I mean, I just saw something recently that we've printed over $10 trillion. 40% of the dollars today are new in the last 12 months. I saw another thing where our unfunded liability is $84 trillion. This is what we're on the hook for. Market at the time of this recording is, flat right now, but pretty much at an all-time high. I've been saying that as far as value creation goes, it's like there's got to be something that gives, but because of us just printing more money, I think we're just delaying the problem. But with interest rates having to go up eventually, what do you see? Do you make predictions? Do you want to go on record and be a genius a year from now, or what? I'm giving you an opportunity.
Yeah. So here's what I would say. If you look at the past, like take the crash 2008, 2009, what happened is values, plummeted. Well, what happened to rents? Rents stayed really flat.
Right.
And graph rents from like 2014 to 2017. They went crazy, right? Well, if you graph like 2017 to 2007, you get a rent, and I'm speaking Denver specifically, but you get a rent increase of about 4%. If you graph from today to 1975, you get a rent increase of about 4%. So here's the thing. If you use leverage properly, and to me, proper use of leverage is fully amortized fixed rate debt. If you can do those two things, it's a short against the American dollar, as you said earlier, or the way I phrase it is a hedge against the American economy, because something does have to give. Now, when will that be? I don't know. But let me say it like this. Let me see if I can get my analogy right for everybody listening. So if you owe money, right? So you owe a mortgage. Let's say you owe a mortgage. If you owe money, debt, and that debt is covered by something that's inflationary, but it's fixed for you, you're in a darn good spot because your payment stays the same, which is what fixed rate debt is, and the rent that you collect can increase. A An okay spot is when you have an adjustable rate mortgage covered by rents and they both can increase. Now, 2008, 2009, where people got pinched is rents stayed the same and couldn't increase, values dropped, and the payments jumped. So they were screwed. The worst place to be is when your income stays the same, but your payment changes. That's when you can get screwed. And those are the two levers. Yeah, that's what happens. So for me, the reason I like rental properties is I can fix my payment. Now, expenses may change a little bit, but in general, it stays the same, but it's covered by rent. And that rent can go up, and it typically does go up. In bad economies, it stays flat.
Right.
And that's, I'm not making that up. That's just a historical fact.
Right. And in an economy, if things go south and people do lose their houses, what are they doing? They're renting. And so
they're renting.
It's one of those things where, I had someone the other day tell me that trailer parks are very recessionary proof because there's only so far, what am I trying to say? There's only so far you can fall, I guess.
Correct.
And it's like,
there's a floor.
Yes.
Yep.
And that gives you perspective of like America, we're not going to let 40% of the population sleep on the streets. There's something that's going to happen for whether we agree with it or not. That's one bet that you can make. So it's very, very interesting. I don't get political very often on the show. I can't help but to comment on your name. Do you want to break down why you guys came up with the business name, and do you have anything that you want to go on record as it relates to your thoughts on politics right now, and give your 2 cents?
All right, so 3 things. Going back to the value question, and in real estate right now, there's a lot of people it's sexy to have Airbnbs, and people are making full-blown portfolios. Go ask all those same people how well they felt about Airbnbs in April of 2020,
right?
When travel stopped, airlines stopped, those people were losing their minds because they were worried. Why? Because they had really nice, sexy houses. So here's the funny thing. I tell people this. If you have 2 rentals, nobody thinks it's sexy. If you have 22 doors, people start thinking it's sexy again. If you've got 62 doors, people are like, dude, what the heck are you doing, man? Teach me. All of my rentals save my home that I live in. None of them have more than 3 bedrooms. None of them. Why? Because I want to be the Budlight of real estate. I want to be the thing that everybody can afford. Good economies, bad economies. I want to be generally flat. It's what I have dubbed. It's my liquor store days, right? It's the Budlight of real estate. That's how I think of it. Now, to your question, Atlas. Our company name is Atlas Real Estate. If you look at our logo, it is Atlas Shrugged. It's Ayn Rand. It's what some people have called the capitalist Bible, and it's those that produce when eventually the story goes. Eventually, just shrug and just quit producing. If you take, those people will quit producing. Politically, I won't get into it too much. Here's what I can tell you. I didn't vote for neither Biden nor Trump in the last presidential election. I think politics, I try to stay more on the local politics because it affects me more. National politics are important. I also happen to think that presidents are kind of like quarterbacks. They get much more praise and much more blame when things don't go well. Like Tom Brady won the Super Bowl. Well, there's 21 other starters that had a little something to do with it. Yeah. He's amazing. Don't get me wrong. And Tommy Toughnuts, if you're listening, I'd love to debate it with you. I mean, you're awesome, old man, River. But I would say that in general, politicians are not looking out for you and me. They are making rules. And for your listeners out there, it would likely disgust you how much income taxes I personally pay. When you look at my W-2 wages and you look at the income taxes that I pay, you'd be like, that's completely not fair. And I would tell you that, and the reason I say that is our politicians make rules for us that they don't have to live by. And that drives me crazy. My brother is a school teacher in California, and he pays almost as much tax as I do every year. And he lives on a school's teacher salary. And it's totally not fair from a what's fair and equitable sense. But I just play by the rules, and that's what I would say. So anybody that gets so worked up over politics, like, dude, they don't care about us. They're just trying to get over it, saying anything they can.
Yeah.
to vote. Generally speaking, if you want my personal opinion, I tend to lean conservative with my money and liberal with my social issues. That's frankly, I'm probably right in the middle. Just everybody leave me alone.
Yeah.
You can all just leave me alone. That'd be great.
Right. What's your 2 cents on value creation? Because if I had to summarize wealth in general, and if someone says, what's the hedge against inflation? It's like, find something that's going to be valuable and you'll be fine. What is your 2 cents on that?
Absolutely. I mean, the word landlord's been around for 1,000 years because he who owned the land was the Lord. It's feudal. It's from feudal Europe. The term landlord, it just makes sense. Everybody needs a place to live. Everybody's got to have a roof over their heads. I don't own a bunch of super sexy real estate. I just happen to own a lot of Budlight real estate.
Yeah, I like that, man. Budlight of real estate. I'm gonna get you a T-shirt. We should start a T-shirt brand.
Yes. Budlight might be mad at me for that.
I might do Miller Lite since I'm originally from Wisconsin. I might have to represent.
I like it. Well, I get a trademark since I copyrighted or something. It was my idea. I would say the other thing, what I would tell people too, find one thing and do it really well.
Yes.
I think so many investors, they try to pick and choose. Like, I'm going to do crypto now, and I'm going to do gold now, and I'm going to short this, I'm going to buy that. And they're not experts at anything. I know my lane. People come to me like, do you buy industrial real estate? Nope. I own 0 industrial real estate. Do I do raw land development? Nope. I don't do any of that stuff. I know my lane and I'm really good at what I do. Yeah. And if one of my clients has a question about something else, I'll go find the expert in that category.
Right.
Because I feel like it's just safer and nobody can be good at everything. So find that one thing and man, freaking do that.
I preach that every day. Thank you for being an echo chamber for myself. I've been enjoying this conversation, if you can't notice. The final question that I end all the podcast are my legacy question. So to put on your dad hat, and let's say this is your last day on earth and you're with the people that you love the most. You can't give them any of your businesses. You can't give them any materials or podcasts that you've done, but you can only give them one last conversation. What are you going to make sure to highlight in that last conversation with your kids and the people that you love the most?
I would say that, make sure that the last thing when we leave, if I go be hit by a bus, I want the last thing how I spoke to people, I want them to remember that with kindness. Or frankly, even more than kindness is authenticity is, be you. Don't be two-faced. Don't be you out here and a different you here. Be you all the time and give of who you are. And in the end, that's all we can really give is who I am. I can only give that to you. Money comes and goes. Advice changes. We talked about that, what you're going to invest in, how you're going to live, but give of who you are and lead with love. I mean, I think that's the key is lead with love.
I think you could also make the statement that if you live an authentic life, it's one of the true definitions of wealth. I love the answer. How can people stay connected with you? How can we follow the journey that you're up to? I'll tell you what, wherever you're speaking, we might have to get you at a BetterWealth conference and have you be a speaker. I love the energy, man.
I'm in. It's realatlas.com. We do a bunch of free Zoom calls and teachings, and we have women's events and IRA investing. I mean, all sorts of different stuff, but it's just realatlas.com if you guys want to stay connected to us. I would say follow me on social media, but I don't have any social media, but we do it Atlas. So actually, last funny story for you, I was sitting in marketing meetings a few months ago, and I was like, I've never tweeted. And our marketing lady, Cassie, looks at me and goes, yeah, you have. And I was like, I have? And I was like, am I funny? So, if you want to follow us, we'd be more than interested. And you can email me, you can call me on my cell phone. I don't care, man. We're always here to help.
Cool, man. I appreciate you so much. And I look forward to getting this aired and getting the feedback from it. There's a lot of good nuggets. I honestly think there's a couple key takeaways, and I would just encourage people listening to this and watching this is like, how can you live authentically? How can you pick that one thing, be really, really good at it? If you're going to go the real estate route, which both Michael and I agree that it's like there is something there. Really understand it. Pick maybe the Budlight of the industry. Pick a thesis. Become excellent at it, and then understand how to leverage. whether it's money, whether it's your time, whether it's with relationships. But the person that can find value and then learn to leverage that value will become wealthy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, thank you very, very much. I've enjoyed the heck out of this conversation.